A very good morning to our speaker, Prof Dr Indraneil and all participants for these online sessions on philatelic biodiversity, frogs on stems. Well, despite the current COVID situation, we are still able to gather in sharing experience and knowledge on science and biodiversity through this online platform, which is the new norm now. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, there are a few housekeeping notes I would like to highlight. You may type your question in the Q&A box to avoid any interruption during the speaker's presentation. Your question will be raised during the Q&A session, and before the end of the talk, kindly fill in our feedback form at the link provided. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Prof Dr Indraneil. Prof Dr Indraneil obtained his doctoral degree in animal ecology from the University of Oxford and was a Fulbright Fellow at the Museum of Comparative Zoology, Harvard University. Since 1998, he has been a staff of Universiti Malaysia Sarawak and is currently professor at its Institute of Biodiversity and Environmental Conservation. Prof. Das is the top-ranking subfield zoologist in Malaysia. His current research interests includes herpetology, systematics, biogeography, conservation biology, and the history of natural history. Prof. Dr. Indraneil served as referees for the National Geographic Society and the National Science Foundation USA, the Rolex Award for Enterprise Awards and the Ruffords Foundation, as well as Oxford and Cambridge University Presses. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Prof. Dr. Indraneil. Prof, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Constance. Thank you for a very generous introduction. I would also like to thank SBC, Sarawak Biodiversity Center, for inviting me to give this talk. And morning, everyone. It could be good evening for some friends joining us from the US, and maybe even for a friend from Bhutan. It's a very early morning in the middle of winter. So welcome everyone to this webinar. This is not an academic one, so it's free and easy. I will try to make it hopefully a lot of colorful images, not a boring academic webinar that we are usually giving, which students suffer through. And with these few words, I will start my presentation. I'll share my screen. Right, is it okay, Constance? Can be viewed? Yes, all right, okay. So today I'm going to talk about two things very close to my heart: frogs and stamps. Frogs, including amphibians. So what if I change the title now? I'm going to talk about amphibians and stamps rather than frogs, just frogs. And this is extremely interesting for me. I mean, competing interest for me, but also the synergy. And I want to show how important philately is in terms of the message a government can give to its citizens, to society, to promote biodiversity conservation, increase knowledge about species and habitats and science and much more. So this would be the basis of this morning's talk for me. So just to give you a very brief background, most people who know me know that I'm extremely passionate about frogs, and I love frogs, and so does all my students. And we do research on frogs. And for me, this journey started, there were no photos from that time, but this is a painting of a boy catching frogs. I think most of us have such beginnings, most herpetologists, of catching animals, putting them in bottles. And thereafter, of course, collecting stamps. Of course, very few do it today. This day and age, there are many more better distractions, perhaps. But this is a postcard my friend Pui Young Min developed for one of our events we do in Unimas, the International Bonian Frog Race. This year, of course, we don't have the race, and for obvious reasons, the pandemic. And this shows some of the frogs of the world. So let's go very quickly. Amphibians are very, very important from many different perspectives, from ecosystem perspective as being food of many animals and being predators themselves. There are information that there's data, published information showing that when frogs are harvested in large numbers, there is a crop failure, what's called destruction of crops by insects. So they're very important functions, even in rainforests where there's no human presence, the control of invertebrates and supply of food for higher animals in the food chain. So all very important. And also, you'll be surprised to know that about 10% of the world's Nobel laureates have worked on frogs directly for their prizes and for the things they're most famous for. Here is a French geneticist, Jean Rostand, who worked mostly on frogs, on genetical problems. And he said, theories pass, but the frog remains. So in my talk, I'll be mostly showing you pretty pictures of frog stamps. And here, I would like to make a distinction between what's a stamp and what's a postage stamp. Most of my talks will be on postage stamps, which are, this is a representative of a postage stamp, a printed piece of paper bearing an image, sometimes bearing an image, but not always, but a value. The value tells you how much money you have paid in advance for shipping a piece of stationery, a document, or even a shipment. So this is a very beautiful miniature sheet from the Pacific island of Vanuatu, showing the green and golden bell frog. These frogs are endemic to Vanuatu, but also introduced into Australia, where I think they become a pest species. So I mentioned postage stamps, but there is also other kinds of stamps. These are poster stamps, or sometimes called Cinderellas. They don't have postal validity, but they're issued by countries and organizations to raise money or awareness. This sheet is from Mexico, and it's to raise awareness on tuberculosis, the disease that affects, sometimes fatal, affects a lot of humankind all over the world, and now mostly under control, but still a big problem in parts of the world. So in this sheet, of course, you can see the humble frog somewhere in the middle there, a 20-cent Cinderella. So these, if you fix onto an envelope, your letter will not be delivered. It will not be honored by the postal service, but you can buy these stamps and stick it along with the right value of stamp to an envelope to promote the cause of tuberculosis. So money goes for tuberculosis research or treatment. So we also have many nature-themed poster stamps. These are some examples from the US on the left and Denmark on the right. So the US one, every stamp you buy, every sheet you buy, the money goes to the to the US Foundation for a National Wildlife Federation for protecting wetlands specifically, and a bunch of animals there are, including frogs and various other species of plants and animals. On the right-hand side, you have a postage stamp sheet from Denmark. Again, every stamp sheet you buy, the money goes for amphibian conservation, and it's stuck to an envelope, or it can be kept by a collector who loves these beautiful images like I do. So how many frog stamps have been issued? Postage stamps? I reckon there is no catalog which is up to date, because every month, every week, new things come out, new items come out. I hear there's a new one from Sweden issued this week, so I need to get that. So there are about nearly 2,000 postage stamps featuring amphibians, mostly frogs, but also salamanders, and there's even at least one stamp of a caecilian. So why should we be interested? It's now been shown that people, young boys who collect stamps, are more knowledgeable. They have more awareness of other things apart from their studies. For instance, collecting stamps, you know names of countries, you know the currencies, what species are found in those countries, and many other things. So for instance, you'd be surprised to know that this part of Seychelles issued its own stamp. It's a postal authority. Or Rio Muni in Spain issued its own stamps in the past. And a curious boy or a girl would be then research, what is this country all about? It's part of Equatorial Guinea, and would therefore increase your general knowledge. So there is much benefit to studying these little pieces of paper. Studying stamps or philately. Philately used to be called collecting stamps, but more appropriately is the study of stamps. There are many people who are philatelists but don't collect stamps. They study stamps because some are so valuable and rare that the materials in museums. Individual cannot own such items, but studying them, online sources and books, one can understand a lot of history and science. For instance, this issue from Hong Kong shows discoveries made in ancient China, including in advances in astronomy, medicine, and mathematics, and other fields, perhaps biology. And one of the first here, earthquake detection machine, whereby a small tremor would cause a metal ball to fall down and get picked up by these toads at the bottom of this machine, which of course is over 1,000, almost 1,800 years old machine. You can see one of the first sensors devised by man. Even closer to time, let's have a look. We have, for instance, DNA, the discovery of DNA, and we know about this by Watson and Crick in the 50th year of the discovery of the structure. Royal Mail in the UK, Great Britain, issued a series of stamps, and one of them shows all these animals which have contributed to our understanding of genes and genetics, including here you are, Mr. Frog, talking to Mr. Crocodile, Dr. Crocodile. There is also, of course, a very famous Luigi Galvani, who was the first to discover animal electricity, bioelectricity, through examination of the movement of the muscles of frogs. And here you can see, unfortunately, a partially dissected frog on Galvani's table. Frogs have also featured very prominently in human art and culture. And I am just showing a very few examples here out of the many frogs and stamps. From Zimbabwe, a wooden frog painting of a frog from Paraguay. And for me, very interesting, this very, very motivational image based on a Japanese calligrapher by the name of Ono, again, almost 1,000 years ago, or 800 years ago, who was demotivated by his life and his situation till he saw this frog in a pond trying to jump onto some leaves or branches, and after many attempts was successful, and this made him more determined. So here's a message that even these humble amphibians can give mankind: determination, will, hard work. These are values which we can get from the natural world. We can also teach children the values of society using animals. When we say be good all the time, they may not listen to us, but if we couch this advice in the form of a story using animal characters, maybe it has a better chance. And of course, this beautiful set of stamps from Taiwan uses different animals, Chinese fables. And one of them, of course, we know the story of the frog in a well. Never be a frog in a well, Constance? How is a stamp born? A stamp is born in the head of someone. You think of the design. The design is thought of by an artist, maybe at the request of the postal authority, who would then design the stamp on paper and show it to the printing, the postal authority for approval. And finally, it would be printed, but the process has changed over time. And for many years, the intaglio or gravure process was practiced in producing stamps and books and most printed material before the advent of computers. And most stamps were produced etched on copper plates like these. It's of course highly illegal to own such copper plates, but I managed to get these because Yugoslavia doesn't exist anymore. And I guess the postal authorities sold off these original copper plates. And the stamp is from 1962, a beautiful tiger salamander, on a stamp, part of a series. And the original copper plates there. So part of the production also includes producing proofs, just like in books and papers. Page proofs are issued, which are sent for correction. These are some page proofs of stamps, which I have in my collection, which are from Tonga, the black and white proofs, but it was later printed in color, and perforate and imperforate proofs of two stamps here. And from Cameroon, it's a numbered proof by the artists who would therefore ensure that it goes to the right authorities. And eventually it landed up in my collection. So these are old stamps, and the proofs therefore have no value to postal authorities. Sometimes they sell them off, or when the printing press goes out of business, they sell them off. Sometimes an essay, which is the design of the stamps, are produced, but are not issued for any number of reasons. Maybe a revolution in Nicaragua, or in some cases not approved because maybe the piranha looks too scary for children, or maybe a species does not occur later, they find out in that country. So this is an unissued page artist proof of a sheet of wildlife, including one frog from the Central American country of Nicaragua. So in the past, these copper plates used to produce color proofs in stages, and this is the 4 colors used in CMYK color printing of stamp from Mozambique. This was a very beautiful series of stamps. And so when you add these 4 colors onto each over one another, you get the final beautiful frog showing all the colors. So how has Malaysia performed in issuing biodiversity stamps? I think wonderfully. Every year there are several issues covering biodiversity, and amphibians too have graced stamps of the country, including this very famous series from more than 10 years now. Maybe it's time for them to issue another set showing these 3 species and a miniature sheet, which I'll talk about later. And was the cover on the left of the folder showing some of these and other species. So Australia is another country very proud of its biodiversity and has issued many stamps to depict, represent these species. It's a folder on the left and 2 miniature sheets, which are a large sheetlet with several stamps. And this is the regular issue on the top. And on the bottom, the scan doesn't show it, but it has holographic printing, and it's limited to 200. It's a highly exclusive for collectors. And you see my number of my sheetlet is 142. So this is how postal authorities keep it exciting for people to collect. These are numbered prints, and presumably some people collect for investment value. In fact, philatelic interest includes collecting rarities for investment and for personal pleasure. And sometimes for education. I very often use stamps to teach different concepts. And these were the stamps from the same series. There were 4 values, 4 different designs with the values associated with them. Stamps can also be printed on an envelope or a cover, and these are some pre-printed amphibian envelopes from different countries: Poland, Romania, and Russia, showing different amphibians. And in this case, you don't cut them out, you will keep the whole thing in your collection. And very beautiful these are. And there are also aerograms. I'm not going to show them today. Aerograms featuring amphibians with the image printed on these aerograms. So we spoke about official stamps by governments, but there are also agencies which can ask postal departments to print stamps for them. These were produced by the Natural History Museum in Vienna. These feature local amphibians and reptiles and are called personalized stamps. These are also valid for postage, but not normally sold at the post office. In Malaysia, we have Stemku, which is the same concept. You can go with your picture and they'll print a stamp with you appearing on the frame of the stamp. So other countries do other things. For instance, private couriers in Germany can produce their own stamps, which in this case, the Beaver Post I want to show from Magdeburg has this series of amphibian stamps, local stamps. But of course, the quality, I think, is not as good as proper printing. These were probably printed using inkjet printer. But on the right, you see some personalized stamps, semi-official personalized stamps from Belgium. And this shows the famous story of the princess and the frog. And there's a frog in almost every frame of the stamps. There are 3 in each pane. So these are some examples of personalized stamps. So I'll talk about an exhibition we did in Unimas with the great assistance of the staff of IBEC, my Institute of Biodiversity and Environmental Conservation, and students, especially the grad students who helped do this exhibition, showing all the frog stamps, which was subject of a Guinness World Record attempt. And these are some examples. You have Ecuador, which has been very, very active in issuing stamps of biodiversity. And here are some examples from Ecuador. Brazil also very important, but I'm not showing them. I mentioned Brazil because my friend wants to mention me to mention Brazil in this talk, but check them out later. Suriname, also famous for its amphibian stamps. These are very, very beautiful. This is just some of them. There are many more frog stamps from the country, small South American country, Suriname. So frogs can also appear in other items apart from stamps, like in the, what you call here, chop, the cancellation, the postmark applied to the stamp to ensure it's not reused. So these pictorial postmarks very often have amphibians, or can have amphibians. This is a giant salamander, the world's largest amphibian in Japan. And this is from the UK, Queen. And Costa Rica, also very famous for its amphibians and amphibian ecotourism. So, and again, we have one more example, the Salamander postmark from Germany. And my friend Pui Yong-min and I wrote a book actually on amphibian postmarks from around the world. It's a bit outdated, but we hope we can reprint or revise and reprint this unusual book. So I mentioned personalized stamps. The Bonian Frog Race, which our institute in collaboration with Sarawak Forestry Corporation and others that we used to organize till the COVID hit us, issues private personalized stamps, which we distribute to our participants and mail letters with them. These are some representations of these stamps over the years, and an exclusive edition, which we sell at auction to raise money for amphibian conservation, even has a Swarovski crystal on the eye of the frog. So frogs can also be the subject of conservation activity, frog philately. And here in the year 2019, Idaho Department of Fish and Game in the US held a special ceremony when they issued this booklet pane of 4 value frog stamps, local species of stamps, frogs. And I even have the invitation letter that was distributed to invite VIPs to this event. And in Vietnam, across the other side of the world, similar things have taken place. Release of stamps of tree frogs, very specific tree frogs. And here is the pamphlet they issued for the release, signed by the designer. And you see one stamp, and the cancellation also has a little froggy there. And these were the stamps. When you stick a stamp to a postcard, it's called a maximum card or maxi card. In this case, it's all concordant. There's a frog postcard, frog stamp, and a frog cancellation. Makes it a perfect maxi card. And these are highly desirable by collectors. And certainly they are beautiful items to show, display, and use as a teaching material when you're talking about conservation and the beauty of biodiversity. Some people even collect frogs on envelopes. And these are some from my collection. I asked my friends, hey, when you write to me, put these frog stamps on the cover, and they do. So these are some examples from Vietnam and Thailand. So frogs stamps can not just appear as single stamps, but sometimes people don't like the fact you have to lick a stamp or put water and stick it. So sometimes modern stamps are now trying to deal with this issue, and for different reasons, for hygiene, they have sticker stamps like these. These are called booklet panes, where you peel off and stick. And there are also other modern stamps, which are pressure stamps. You apply pressure and it sticks to the envelope. So no need for glue, water, or licking the back of the stamp. And this is a very, very interesting and beautiful series of stamps from Ecuador, showing all the local biodiversity of frogs. So Malaysia has, I mentioned, been very active in issuing biodiversity stamps, and this one, a few years ago, 2016, shows a bunch of animals, including, of course, a frog there, a turtle here, tor, fish, ikan sima, and various other groups of animals. And all these are also represented in the official cancellation. This is the Kuching cancellation. When a stamp is released, the first day of release, they're put on a special envelope, and which could be printed, and with a special postmark. This is most important to cancel the stamps. So this is from the Principality of Liechtenstein, a small Central European country that issued stamps of the local amphibians, salamanders, and one frog. Stamps and first day covers can also be collected in this form. These are called medallion covers. Some people think it's another way a postal department can take your hard-earned money, and but certainly they're very beautiful. In this case, Australia's first day covers have inserted medallion or coin, a colorful coin, which of course show frogs. So I have a set of this. So a little bit of numbers, sorry, facts that you can see here. This is a paper published in a scientific journal, Frontiers of Ecology and Environment, which show that within animals, vertebrates are more often represented in stamps than they should be. In terms of numbers, inverts are poorly represented. And within vertebrates, birds and mammals are more often represented. Of course, we assume this and we knew about this, but this is a demonstration of that, which shows that amphibians, are very poorly represented in stamps compared to the diversity of amphibians in the world. And the same for fish and reptiles. And just curious, if you are like me, within mammals, the most often represented would be elephants and monkeys and other primates, and groups like bats and rodents are poorly represented. So in terms of diversity representation of stamps, amphibians remain poorly represented. And yet they are very, very important, especially for understanding conservation issues. And some countries have done that. Guyana and the United Kingdom or Great Britain have issued stamps of freshwater biodiversity to draw attention to these resources, these environments. And you see there is an amphibian here and one outside of the stamp on the sheetlet. So I will now tell you how frog stamp collection works. Very often frogs appear on stamps and they'll tell you it's frogs of Zimbabwe or frogs of Malaysia. So I would call them primary. So primary release or classification of frogs and stamps. Here, no doubt that the series is on frogs. It's all about frogs. And here, the Malaysian release in a folder, or one from Taiwan, which is also very nice, or Papua New Guinea or Belarus. These are all very, very beautifully reproduced frog stamps, or Colombia, another great area for biodiversity and for amphibian diversity. But frogs are also on stamps as a secondary image, such as in a landscape of, in this case, Australia, there are 3, 4 frogs, and there are other things. There's a dragonfly and there's a kingfisher. So I would classify this as secondary. Or in this landscape from Uruguay, there is an amphibian, but there's much more. And I love these sheetlets because it gives you a perspective where these animals are likely to be found and what are the other animals found in that same habitat. And it's all very, very educating, I would say, for many people who study. A little boy or girl who would look at this landscape would learn a lot about the natural history of distant land. Or even more interesting, tertiary, whereby you have to be a detective, you have to really study the stamps to find out where is the frog or if there is a frog. For instance, Zimbabwe, a stamp on folklore, how the hippo lost its hair. There is a frog. And there was a fire and the hippo was burnt, all animals escaped, and the hippo lost its fur. There is a little frog here. Or this avant-garde design from Romania, showing an outrageous image of different things, modern art. And if you look closely, there is a girl hugging a frog. So these are tertiary appearance of amphibians in frogs. So talking about tertiary appearance, recently, when was it? In November, I received this envelope from Vietnam from a friend. And I always look for a frog everywhere. And so I looked at the beak. Oh, this is a fish. This was an insect. But this was obscured. So I took my lens out and I saw a frog in the beak of a kingfisher. So suddenly qualifies to be in my collection. And I didn't know about this. And later I got the stamp from the same friend. And clearly it shows a frog in the beak of this blue kingfisher. So I'm almost towards the end of my talk, and this is the exhibition we conducted in Unimas a few years ago to attempt for the Guinness World Record. And of course, a great help from my friends in the Institute and students who were so great in working very hard for the event, and also supported by the Philatelic Society of Coaching Sarawak. All the members are here, and some of them are probably watching. And I'm at the end of my talk now. Thank you. So I thank SBC, Constance, all of you, your team, for giving me the opportunity to talk, my institute, which has been very supportive, and all these societies I'm members of. Members find frog stamps, send me from all over the world. And here is one of the recent releases from Malaysia, the tallest tropical tree, as you know. And I made a private maximum card, which I sent to some friends, showing the Bonian flying frog. With that, I end the talk. And here's a proof that I do have all these stamps. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for the insightful and interesting talk. Nice picture of the frogs in the stamps as well. And ladies and gentlemen, let us now begin the Q&A session. Now, I will read the question posted through the Q&A box during the presentation. Our first question is from Asang Hurai. His question is, can you give an overview on the conservation status of frogs, amphibians in general in Sarawak?
Thank you for this question. It's a very broad question. What are the problems? It is a very long question. I could talk about this for a few weeks, but I'll give you a very quick response. The issue is primarily habitat. We have to protect habitats. Now the country has legal mechanisms for that, and actively many departments work for that. such as the Forest Department, the Forestry Corporation, and many others indirectly support them or even directly support them. So it's a challenge. Development needs to happen, but we also need to protect habitats. So if you protect habitats, you save frogs. Thank you.
Next, questions from Charlie Yo. Are there any frogs depicted in currency?
Thank you, Charlie. And that can be a topic of another talk, because I do collect coins and banknotes with frogs. And there are maybe 50 or 60 coins and maybe 10 or 12 banknotes which feature frogs ingredients.
Next, our questions is from Ramli Ahmad from SFC. Who initiated the team or selection of images for the stamp? The post office, academia, or individual?
A very, very interesting question, Romley. We are trying to figure out how to do this. We have the World Congress of Herpetology. Kuching Sarawak is the host. So we would like to produce a special stamp officially with Post Malaysia. So apparently it's a long process. The citizen like ourselves, we can give a petition or application or a request which would be considered by the postal department. But every year they have a plan, a stamp issue program, which is planned years in advance. So we still have some time to go. Every year they have 1 or 2 on biodiversity. So we have to make sure in the year 2024, we have no other big biodiversity conference going on. So primarily, a group of citizens can get together, develop a proposal, and give it to the postal authority for their consideration. Thank you, Ramli.
And we have questions from our staff. How do we help to protect and conserve the frog from facing extinction?
Protection of habitat is important. And maybe frog farming is not a great idea, because most of the frogs that are farmed are non-local species. The American or Taiwanese bullfrog, when you import them, the parent stock, you may import certain diseases which is known to spread to local frogs. So these are ways, but habitat protection is very, very important. Wetland protection.
One last question. Where can public get the stamp that features the Borneo horned frogs?
So the Bornean horned frog stamp was issued by Post Malaysia in more than 2007 or so. So most no post offices would still sell them, but you can search eBay or Delcamp, or go to a Philatelic dealer online. There is even a couple of options in Kuching, dealers who sell stamps. You may be able to buy that stamp. You have to buy the set, which is very inexpensive, but it's a very, very well-designed series, I think. Thank you.
Prof, we have a few questions as well from Tony. Does Prof has a favorite stamp?
I like the stamps from Ecuador and Suriname and all the South American countries. I think they are very, very nice. Stamps can be either paintings or photographs. For some reason, photographs don't lend themselves to being reproduced well. So paintings, yeah. South American countries produce very attractive stamps.
And a questions from Oi. Do you think the amphibians portrayed on stamps has significant roles on conservation?
Yes, as we mentioned in this lecture, that it makes people aware. Very often, the stamps are very commonplace objects. Huh? See it everywhere. A child has access to a letter that may have arrived for the parents. So it makes them aware of the beauty of biodiversity. For me, I remember beautiful stamps from my childhood when there were more letters than there are today. And I still remember seeing my first pita, the bird, on a stamp. I was thinking, wow, what a beautiful bird this is. And I'm sure subconsciously it makes an impact on the child. Thank you.
Okay, from questions from Asang, do you have any stamp featuring kappa from Japanese folklore?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I do have all the Japanese kappa stamps. They're cartoonish. Yes, I love them. And the Japanese stamps are actually rather hard to get, I guess, because there are a lot of collectors in Japan, serious collectors. But I do have them.
And we have a questions from Kwe Boon Hee. Any plans to set up a frog museum in Malaysia or Sarawak or in Kuching especially?
Kwebun, he is a very unusual man. He runs a frog museum in Sabah. He's from Sarawak, so I can see where the question is leading. If Kwebun he wants to set up one, I would certainly help him. He's my friend and a
Oh.
former student.
We have one more questions. What are the challenges you face in your research on conservation biology?
The biggest problem, of course, is a threat to habitats. As infrastructure improves, which gives you access to habitats, but many negative impacts also get into such habitats. So development is a challenge. I won't say negative all the time. There's positive aspects also of development in terms of conservation. So yes, human population is probably the biggest threat to frogs.
We have one question from Nor Shamia. Her question is this: how to keep stamp collection in a good condition for a long time?
This is a very, very interesting and important question for philatelists. Stamps and books, how do you keep them well? We all live in the tropics here, and it's near impossible to keep them well. And if you don't, the quality, the value, everything goes down. And eventually, you'll be left with something worthless. So keeping them dry is very important. So important stamps, some kind of a dry cabinet in a dry room, air conditioning. People do different things, and using the right material for storing stamps. I heard people who used to store in certain non-acid paper envelopes or albums had stamps that are foxed, which is tiny microorganism on paper, which happens with old books. So when it happens to stamps, the value and the beauty of the stamp is destroyed. So keep them dry. Use professional material like a non-acid backed paper or plastic. Keep them sealed from humidity and from sunlight and heat, and I think they'll be fine. And try not to touch stamps with your finger. Use forceps. Thank you.
From Nara Nefa, is there any diseases being a threat to frog conservation in Malaysia?
Okay, thank you. This is also a very, very important question for a conservation biologist. So there is a fungal disease which is affecting frogs around the world. All frog people would know, frog biologists. And in Malaysia, this has been found but it's not a disease. It's not a epidemic. It is positive in some populations, but apparently the species and assemblages have been able to survive while carrying these fungus. So in some other parts of the world, it's become a near pandemic, and many species are actually extinct because of this fungus.
Thank you once again, Prof, for answering those questions. Res, it has indeed been an eventful and insightful session that allowed us to explore deeper meaning and appreciations of Philatelic's biodiversity, frogs on stems. Let's give a big round of applause to Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we have come to the end of the session. Before we end, kindly complete the feedback form through the survey option available in Zoom. This webinar has been recorded and live streaming via our Facebook page, and you can view it again via our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/sarawak.biodiversity-center, and also in YouTube at youtube.com/sbcorg-mind. Yeah? So do subscribe to our Facebook page in order to access the recorded session. So this concludes the webinar. On behalf of SBC, I would like to thank you for all your active participation. We hope you have gained immensely and enjoyed this talk. See you again in our future online talk. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Constance.